Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and author of the newly released book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. This morning, we're very pleased to welcome Leah Darrow to the program. Leah is the author of The Other Side of Beauty, Embracing God's Vision for Love and True Worth. Leah, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Leah is a former model and contestant on America's Next Top Model. She has a driving passion to inspire women to do something beautiful with their lives. She's an international speaker, writer, and host of the Do Something Beautiful podcast. She and her family live in St. Louis, Missouri. Leah, when you were growing up, were you being groomed for this? I remember these shows, Beauty Pageant Moms, whatever it was. Was that your mom?
No, it was not my mom, but I was definitely a child that, consumed media. And so I grew up with the Miss Universe pageant and Miss America pageant, and that was a really big deal. I also grew up with a ton of Barbies and playing with those, dolls that kind of gave you a reflection of what I guess I thought a woman should look like and what a woman should have too. As silly as it was, but I had the Barbie mansion and the Barbie Corvette and the hot tub and the cute boy, the Ken doll with me. And so I did grow up in that time where beauty was definitely being formed within me as something outside of me. That beauty was something I'd have to consume, I'd have to purchase, I'd also have to look like a certain thing to be beautiful. So I think that's really kind of where things began to form within me. My parents, I think, were just probably slightly unaware of the effects of some of those things that I was doing in terms of watching Miss America or playing with my Barbie would really have. I mean, would it really have a long-term effect, or is it just something fun? And I'm sure that they assumed and hoped that it was just something fun.
So, did you grow up in a church-going family?
I did, absolutely. I grew up in a Christian home, very faithful. Parents were very faithful to keeping the Sabbath holy, and we talked about God in our life every day. It was very common. I mean, we always talked about that. God was something that was very familiar to me, and I grew up in a home and an extended family that practiced that faith.
So this image now that you're beginning to get, you're being presented that we were formed in the image of God. You have a great meme on your website. God didn't want to Photoshop me. He made me this way. He didn't design Photoshop to make me look different than he created me. He's the original Photoshop. He's the original creator, and I'm to learn to embrace that in his image as opposed to this artificial image. Where did it start to drift apart? Where did it start to move away, where one set of images became more compelling than another set of images?
Well, I think it's hard to say there's one certain spot, but I will think that it's a slow effect of being a consuming today, of just being a part of the world. And the world definitely, our culture does not want to embrace God's view of love, of worth, of beauty, of human dignity. And so it makes sense. I mean, our culture wants us to consume what they have and their bottom line to feed into that. So I think it was a slow process of me just looking at what the world offered was beauty, and how that was tied actually to value and worth. And so it also was tied to love, of being lovable and wanting people to like you. And so if you wanted love, and if you wanted people to like you, and if you wanted friends or a significant other, then it also meant that you had to look a certain way. And the world provided this framework for me or anybody else to attain that. And so it was all very physical, it was very superficial and exterior. So it was how I looked, how I portrayed myself, the type of guy that I would date, what he would look like, how our life would look together. And it never really none of those things really came into like what was I made for? And what's my purpose and my meaning? And those ideas that I grew up with, that God makes us in his image and likeness, and God makes us unique and unrepeatable, they just stopped becoming an influence, because honestly, what the world was offering and what culture was offering, it seemed to be better. It seemed more glamorous, more amazing. It was enticing. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll go that direction. And through high school, of just choosing relationships with the wrong definition of love, and those carrying through college, and then finding myself in situations that I know God would not approve of, but also being scared. Would God forgive me? Would God allow me to start over with him? And being so fearful of that process, I decided to lean more towards the world and culture out of fear that God might reject me.
So the taste of God you got from your youth pastor, your taste of God you got from your Sunday morning, the taste of God you got in whatever conversations you had, there was an overwhelming flavor of the world. There was visual bombardment, there was physical bombardment, there was even when you see the subtlety of commercials, if your lips don't look like this, then you need this product. If your eyes do not look like this, you need this product. If your body does not look like this, then you need this product. And it's perfectly packaged so that it is by comparison, to force you to compare yourself to that image and that image alone. And if you don't conform to that image, then you are to spend all kinds of money. And it appears that cosmetics and cosmetic apparatus, eyelashes, extensions, whatever, seem to be priced to where you really have to want it because it's expensive.
Yeah, the beauty industry has a bottom line, and that is always wanting your dollars in their pockets. The beauty industry, the fashion industry, has absolutely no desire for us to develop our souls, to become closer to God, to become better neighbors, to care about other people. That's not the bottom line at all of the beauty and fashion industries that affect all of us through commercials, through products online, through what you see as you're driving down the highway. All of it does affect us. And I think that effect really did have a large effect on my life, not even knowing it, not realizing that I was consuming and taking in an ideology that was absolutely putting God not just in a corner, but trying to put him way in the back seat, to forget about my worth and my identity, my dignity, and how God made me. And the world was saying, hey, let us take care of that. We'll make you beautiful. We'll make you glamorous. We're going to give you a great job. We're going to tell you that your worth is wrapped up in your exterior, which is why for me, I made the jump to actually decide to become a fashion model. And so I ended up auditioning for America's Next Top Model and choosing that path because I really thought that was where I was going to find my worth, my identity, even my dignity, as silly as that sounds. But I really thought I was going to find me there.
Your family, they're watching you go through this. Do they have any idea how all-consuming, how possessed you were by this compulsion for beauty identification, beauty relationship?
I think, once again, it's easy to bundle it up in a quick interview and kind of just say, I was this sweet, great girl, and then I kind of wasn't, and then I'm trying to come back now. But it was a process, and so it's slow. It was a slow process of just, you know, wanting to wear makeup at an early age and being really consumed with how I looked and having all the right outfits and always, you know, putting on something new all the time, never being happy with what I had or caring about other people who had less than me. All of those things took a slow toll on my life. And by the time I was making these decisions that really were very vain, very prideful, I was an adult, you know, I was in my very early 20s, and my parents definitely disagreed with some of my decisions, and they spoke up and they did tell me. At this point, though, for me, I thought, hey, you know, I appreciate your thoughts and your comments, but I'm going to go ahead and just live my life the way I want to because I think I know best. I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate you talking to me about faith and God, but that ship has sailed. And so in some ways, it felt at the time probably for my parents that it was a little bit too late, which was not the case, but I'm sure it felt like that for my parents, for sure.
Was there an internal struggle, or were you so focused? And the reason I'm asking this question is I often refer to Phantom of the Opera, the Broadway show and the movie. And here's this young woman, and she's a rising star, but this man comes to her and says, "Come to me, I'm the angel of the night. Come just sing for me." And she becomes as caught up and consumed in that relationship as he is. And it is this constant wooing, this constant luring, this constant possessing, that it becomes very much a darkness that takes over. And you would think that under these bright lights, I mean, I sit under, I don't know, 10,000 watts of bright lights in here. You know what it's like being on the runway. You sit under, everything shows, it's completely examined, it's illuminated with the brightest possible light. Was there any conflict inside of you? Or was this just clear sailing? I've got my path, there's nothing holding me back, I'm pressing on, this is the way I'm going, and nothing's going to stop me?
There was a lot of conflict. And in the industry, there's a lot of women exactly like me, where we portray this image of where I'm empowered, I'm making my own decisions, but we didn't create these beauty standards. Women did not create these beauty standards, but we are living by them, and we're accepting them, and we're taking jobs and accepting a lot of things we shouldn't, especially with this Me Too campaign that's happened. We're accepting a lot of things that we shouldn't in the name of, well, I'll get a job and it'll help my career. So for me, absolutely, there was a massive amount of conflict in my soul, in my heart, in my head that was going on. And that conflict, praise God, there was conflict, because that was the foundation of faith my parents raised me with, to give me a foundation of truth, of beauty, of goodness that comes from God alone, because he's the creator of all of those things. So that was my foundation, and I couldn't shake that. I may try to twist the truth or twist beauty or distort it, but I can't ever create that. God is that creator. And so that internal struggle definitely happened constantly. And I was always trying to hide it, always trying to fight of, I'll just ignore it. I won't think about it till later, or I'm going to just disregard it and become indifferent to the truth and just live my life the way I want to, because I was also afraid. How do I get out? What am I supposed to do? I'm here in New York and I'm trying to make it. I mean, if I go home, they'll call me a failure. They'll think that I can't hack it. I'll have no money. How will I pay my bills? All these challenges became massive struggles within my own heart. So I was in conflict constantly, always trying to pretend that everything was just fine. I always had a smile on my face and acted like it was absolutely okay, the lifestyle that I was living. But it wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. And many many women all over the world are pretending this exact same thing. We're playing a game with ourselves. We are lying to ourselves, telling ourselves that this is what we want, that this is good for us, that this will empower us, when we know deep down it doesn't.
I'm going to ask you it'll be a harshly worded question, not intending to be harshly worded, but it needs to be framed this way. Is this simply human trafficking without the sex?
Yes. I do think that the beauty industry and the fashion industry is a form of some type of beauty prostitution, fashion prostitution, absolutely. And is there sex involved as well sometimes? Yes. So it's not completely not human trafficking. Absolutely. Yes. And I think that we should talk like that, because this is what's really going on. Women are being sold. Women's bodies are being used to sell things. That is a form of trafficking. It might be the lower form. I understand that. But there's a form that we are being used for some other consumer good. And there's a whole list of things that are wrong with that. But absolutely. And this happens all the time. I mean, women have to get themselves to a place to even sometimes do the work that we're called to do in the fashion and the beauty industries. Not every woman, but I wasn't me, but I saw plenty of girls doing lots of cocaine and other drugs in bathrooms before photo shoots just to get through it. So there's a problem going on that we're not really talking about. The beauty industry is not just about trying to make women beautiful. In fact, that's probably one of the last things they really want to achieve.
They always want you to be one step short of beautiful so that you'll get the next product.
Absolutely. The entire game of the beauty and the beauty industry in particular is to sell you perfection. Because once again, we know perfection's not possible. But if they try to present it as it might be, or you're going to get even closer with our products, then you'll continue buying, then you'll continue consuming, and you'll keep striving for perfection because we want that, because we tie our value and our worth up in that as women so often.
You know, when Morgan came to me to pitch having you as a guest on my show, I thought to myself, you know, we're watched all over the world. We're prime time in the Middle East. The Middle Eastern audience is wearing hijabs and covering their faces. Saudi Arabia is just about to let women drive. We're reaching in the prime time market very deliberately, because we bring a God message, the God of Israel, not the God of Islam message. And there are young Islamic women, young Arab girls who are struggling with this. And fortunately, we're prime time and we're not blocked. Only Iran right now is blocking the internet. So there are a lot of young women who are trying to figure out their identity. And of course, in Islam, they have no identity. So this is a whole brand new subject of how this young, attractive woman would struggle with what trying to be beautiful or making themselves attractive, becoming famous, becoming rich, becoming noticeable, becoming a spokesperson. And I realized I have to have you on the program because I don't know anything about this. I know I have a 28-year-old daughter who talks to me about body shaming, and she talks to me about friends who are picked on. She talked to me when she was in high school about image and things like that, and I had an understanding, but I had no idea that the rate of suicide, the rate of anorexia, the rate of drug addiction, Adderall being used as a drug of choice for appetite suppression. So many things as I began to do show prep and looking into the topics we're talking about. I don't just walk in and, they throw me the book and then I do some dance. I want to know about this. I want to know why is this an issue? Why is this relevant? Why is this either a headline a heartline, or biblical truth. If it doesn't fit one of those three categories, that's not our program. But you're bringing something to light that every mother, father, sister, brother, every grandparent needs to be aware of, because what's happening today is this whole idea that I can identify whatever I want to identify myself as, but that is a false reflection, because I'm identifying myself as something relative to something else. There is no one-on-one unique identity between myself and the image of God, the image of Jesus Christ. It is only my image compared to what I think looks right or looks good or what I'm trying to obtain. So how do we get this faith component? How do we get back to, I'm looking at these memes, and what does it say about our women, about our culture, if we'd rather look good than do good? We all want to be liked and wanted. My worth actually comes from being made known and loved by God. You have a collection of memes on the othersideofbeauty.com, which are hard-hitting, charging. We cannot expect different results from our lives if we do nothing to change them. This is in the face of a lot of people that are saying, who are you to judge me? Who are you to inflict your opinion on me? But you were on Cycle 3 of America's Next Top Model, nationally televised show. It's the fashion equivalent of American Idol, America's Got Talent. It's the fashion equivalent of Next Top Chef, Top this, Top that. This is Next Top Model. I think some of the famous models that we hear about now came out of this program that you competed against, and it could not have been competition out of love.
No, not at all. A show like America's Next Top Model is one of the shows that's absolutely destroying the peace with women all over the world. Of course, I did not think that when I went into it. I thought that the show was just something fun, a way for me to make my next step on the ladder of beauty and fashion and modeling. Now, though, with the perspective I have now and what I've gone through and coming back to my faith, I realize that show in and of itself, along with others, is destroying peace between, female solidarity in the world. We are not each other's competition. We should not be competing of who's prettier. What are we doing as women when that's our goal in life, is to look prettier than the girl next to you or take a prettier picture? That is ridiculous and absolutely insulting to our human dignity as women. And we should be standing up and saying no to this, because we've been made in the image and likeness of God. We are unique, we are unrepeatable, and our contribution to this world has something a lot more to do with our brains and our hearts than how we look. And I think that we need to put an end to that.
Well, we're about to go to a break, and I want you to picture a dollar sign, because what you're talking about is this love of money.
Yeah.
That this fame and fortune will bring you money. And once you have money, that's going to bring open up a whole nother world. And we're going to talk about that and how that really speaks to, you cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and money. We're talking with Leah Darrow, former contestant on America's Next Top Model, author of The Other Side of Beauty, Embracing God's Vision for Love and True Worth. You can go to her website, theothersideofbeauty.com, and I'm talking about some hard-hitting, in-your-face conversations you need to have with your sons and daughters that think that how they look and what they need to reflect is the world when they are reflecting a false image of God. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Leah Darrow, author of The Other Side of Beauty, Embracing God's Vision for Love and True Worth. Leah, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
I'm looking at one of the memes that's a quote from your book, and it says, "The beauty and fashion industries are built on the back of our insecurities." That is
Yes.
one powerful statement, and you have that in the book. As a matter of fact, if you go to theothersideofbeauty.com, many of the quotes, the memes that you have out there, are taken directly from the book itself.
That's right.
What was it that compelled you? What was it that you saw missing? What was so profound a revelation? You're eliminated from the competition. You go home, and what are your first thoughts when you got the elimination call?
There was honestly a sense of relief. I was happy for it to be over. Being on a reality TV show is nothing short but chaotic and stressful. I was tired of feeling pitted against my sisters in Christ. I was tired of feeling like I had to always compete with someone else because of how I looked. It was just exhausting, and it was very draining mentally and physically. And so there was a lot of relief, actually, when I was eliminated. Now, granted, I was upset. I did want to win. I was on that show, and my frame of mind at that point was not had not been where it is now. Coming back to my faith and having a more holistic view of kind of what was happening to me. So it was. I was disappointed, but it was, nothing's real about reality TV. I mean, hopefully everybody knows that, but just in case we don't, let me just say it again. There's nothing real about reality TV. My biggest problem today with reality TV is that it takes human brokenness and it puts it out as entertainment. And we should never be entertained by the brokenness of the human family. We should never be entertained by human brokenness, by people, even if no one's, twisting our arms to be on the show. We should not be sitting there eating popcorn or watching the TV, watching people's lives literally be destroyed and ruined and making poor choices, and then be entertained by such a thing. I mean, we should know history well enough to know that there have been terrible, horrible leaders in the past that have done this, that have wanted to pit a certain type of group against everybody else, that thought certain type of people should be eliminated. There are things we should learn from the past about human brokenness, pain, suffering, and we should have hearts that should be in tune to helping people instead of watching things happening and not doing anything about it. And for me, reality TV is one of the small pieces that's kind of inside this big, like the Roman Colosseum. I mean, you used to watch people fight to the death, and people cheered and were happy about it. And I think that reality TV is one of those pieces inside of the modern version of the Roman Colosseum today, where we're just watching things happen and no one's doing anything about it. So for me, being on America's Next Top Model, it was actually a relief to get out of the Coliseum. It was a relief to get out of the place where I was constantly fighting with my sisters, and to kind of just leave and regroup.
When did the idea for the book come to you?
Many years later. I did have a desire to write. I had like a fire in my belly to kind of speak on something, to say on something after I returned to my faith. But it just took a while, and I'm very thankful that I listened to God on that and I did not jump the gun too soon. I really wanted to just rest with God and let him love me, let him heal me, let him forgive me, give him permission to be God and for me to be his daughter. And I think that that was really important for that healing to happen. And that it still is taking, time. And so the idea for the book came almost 10 years ago. And really, honestly, exactly what was going to be involved in it and what I would say and what I would pray and ask God to speak through me to write that took time, and I'm very happy that I didn't publish it 5 years ago or even 3 years ago. And it just seems to be right now at the right time where it has come out, and I feel like I can put it out there and just say that I did my best and just pray that God's okay with that.
You know, throughout the book, you speak to what God has designed for us and why we need the justification for that being the plumb line, that we have to make a conscious, intentional choice to reject what the world's message is. I'm always reminded in Scripture it says faith comes by hearing, and by hearing the Word of God. Well, if faith comes by hearing, what else comes by hearing? Insecurity, anger, depression, self-loathing, all these things. You don't measure up. The negative messages which are spun to sound positive. You could be more beautiful. Well, that's the positive spin on you're not attractive enough. If we would just listen, but we don't, and we don't use a biblical lens to say, first of all, I'm a child of God. So you went through this. I would venture to say that there was not much prayer going on the set.
No, none, zero. Being on America's Next Top Model, absolutely no. It's as atheistic as you can possibly imagine. There's nothing whatsoever that wants you to point or look towards the light of God. There's nothing on there that wants you to consider: is this good for me? Is it good for the other people? Is it good for the world? Am I doing the right? No, of course not. It's very much just for the bottom line, and that's money, and that's getting on TV. That's for Tyra Banks to have her TV show, to make a name for herself, to move forward in whatever she's doing in her career, and we're the pawns being used.
When you finally stepped away from it and you were able to get a real clear vision of what was going on, what was your personal response to that revelation that was given to you?
I was angry. I was mad at myself. I was mad at our culture. I realized I allowed myself to be used. And that was very infuriating for me, that I allowed this process to slowly happen for me to be used, to use what I look like, to use my body. I allowed others to use me, even though I didn't like it, I didn't want it, it was not fulfilling, it did not satisfy, nor did it bring me happiness or joy or peace. And I was mad at myself. I was mad at the culture. I was mad at the world. I was mad at me for choosing. I rightfully chose this. I was not forced into it. I made my own free will decision, as I luckily am as an American woman, to make these choices, to go into an industry that really sells myself, and I am letting my body be used to sell other things for consumer goods. And I was angry. That was my first response. I was really, really angry.
You were single at the time, correct?
Yes.
Okay. This is before you met your Green Beret husband. When you tell this story to groups, when you're in front of when you're in front of parents, when you're in front of churches, how do you bring them into this? Because it almost seems as if God has allowed this to be a part of the fulfillment of our end time prophetic destiny, where I'm going to become so defiant and independent that I'll choose whatever I so well choose, and therefore this mark of the beast, this end time coming, who are you to tell me what I should and should not do? Do you feel that this is all part of that plan, And do you make people aware that this is a part of that darkness which is advancing on the earth?
Absolutely, I do. You know, it's easy to take a look at or to hear a story from somebody and just see kind of a little bit of where they've been and basically just focus on where they're at now. But that's not, you know, as we know, that's not the case for anybody. God has allowed a lot of these things to happen, and all, you know, given all of us free will. We have free will to choose him. We have free will to not choose him. And when we don't choose God in our life, when we don't make him a priority, then there are consequences, and there's consequences to all of our actions. And that's the beauty of choice, is that we are free to make any choice in the world, but we're not free from the consequences of our choices. And so my choices that I made had consequences. They had consequences that I paid for dearly. But as the God that we love and that we know, he is good, he is just, he is love, he is beauty. God is there, and I came back to God. God has forgiven me, and I'm able to start new in him again. And that's the beauty of God, that the world doesn't give you that. The world's not going to give you that second, third, fourth, billionth chance, but God does, and God's the only one who can make new what he has created.
Let's put this in perspective. You went on a modeling show.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the Ten Commandments. There's nothing in the Ten Commandments about wanting to be a model. You went through this process, but the average person out there would say, what do you need to repent of? What is it that was so life-changing for you that you would be running back to the arms of God? You didn't prostitute yourself, you weren't taking drugs, you weren't doing these things, you're just trying to be a model. It's an industry, it's a career path. What is it that you did that you felt so convicted, not condemned, but convicted, that you needed to go to the Lord and ask for forgiveness? Because until we understand in simple, clear terms, we justify everything that we do and refuse to call it sin.
Right.
How did you get to the point of feeling a brokenness, compulsion to repent and turn away from that, which is exactly what repentance is, the turning the complete opposite direction? How would you describe that? Because the average person would say to you, you didn't murder anybody, you didn't rob anybody, you didn't lie to anybody, you didn't commit adultery, you didn't, here's all these things you didn't do. Why would you think that being in a beauty pageant and being on this program and going through this process would be something you would need to repent of?
Right. I wish it was that simple. I wish my life was just, I did nothing wrong except for being on a show, but that's not the case. Everything is tied into one another. And the fact that I allowed myself to be on America's Next Top Model, that was just the beginning. I mean, I talk a lot about some of my personal sins in the book and how it's related to my search for beauty and for love. I did give myself away to men, thinking that I was going to find love there, thinking my worth was tied into how I looked, and so that I had to do things with my body, with my boyfriends to fill that. I did commit sins. That's very clear. I know the 10 Commandments, and I definitely obeyed them. And do not lie. I actually was lying. I was using my body to spread a lie that women should look like me, that the pictures that I have in the magazines, that you should look just like, that is a lie. I was lying. And so, you know, the 10 Commandments and these beautiful laws of love that God has given us, it's not just this personal thing of like, well, I didn't say a lie about how old I was, so it's fine. well, there's something deeper in our connection to the human family that we really need to look at in our lives and our jobs, regardless if you're a model or if you're a CPA or if you're a journalist. We should be honoring that the truth and the laws of love that God has given us in that. If we really respect the human family, respect the world and want to make it honestly better. So for me, I got to a point where I was in the middle of a fashion photo shoot in New York City, where I was after America's Next Top Model. I was living in New York, pursuing my career as a fashion model. And I had an encounter with God that is something that I'll obviously never forget. It's something that changed my life forever. And it was in the middle of the photo shoot, actually, where I heard God in my heart tell me, I made you for more. And it was a loving, peaceful, calm, but strong sense that I got. And I heard that phrase in my heart in the middle of a photo shoot. I made you for more. I made you for more. And it was very convicting, because God's right. He did make me for more. He didn't just make me a pretty girl who takes a pretty picture. God made me with a wonderful heart that he created to do something good in the world for him and for his kingdom. And so that was a moment for me, a turning point in that photo shoot, where I actually walked out of the photo shoot after this experience happened. And I decided then that I would give God another chance, that I would stop listening to the world that actually I hated. You know, it's like I didn't even want to be wanted by the world, but I didn't know what else to do. And so it was kind of like the second elimination for me. In this way, I eliminated the culture. I decided to eliminate them as the voice I would hear in my heart and in my head. And I began to turn my heart back to God.
So everything you had created, this world that you had built for yourself, this house of cards, had now crumbled.
Yes.
And you're standing there with this heap of, if I'm not in the modeling beauty industry, then what and who am I?
Right.
Where did you go to find those answers?
I went back to truth. I went back to the foundation of it. Honestly, I mean, I was broken. I had spent 10 years of my life chasing after false love, false beauty that the world touts as the right thing. And it had a really damaging effect on my life and who I thought that I was, which was crumbling before me because I put my worth in the world. And I realized I wasn't that. Well, then if I'm not that, then who am I? And I went back to my childhood. I went back to the beautiful faith my parents gave me, that God made me, that he loves me, and he has made me to love him, to serve him, and to do good in this world. And I went back to those truths, and I just decided that actually was the unshakable foundation. That was the foundation that I could build my life on, was on the God of Israel, was on God himself. And the foundation that I had used prior with the world was just crumbling. And I just decided I wanted to actually stand firm, and I wanted to know who I was. I wanted to be confident in my identity and in my worth. And that came and comes from God himself. And so I went back to what is true.
In the conclusion of the book, you tell a story about 2-year-old Agnes, your daughter.
Yes.
And the messaging that you gave to her in a very difficult situation, which is the message that God gave you to bring you back.
Yes.
Tell me that story, please.
Agnes was 2 years old, and Agnes has asthma, pretty severe asthma. And she had at this point just a cold. And like anybody who knows medical history, like a small cold can be a big thing for a person with asthma. Agnes was having a cold. She's only 2 years old, and she was really struggling. And we were dealing with it throughout the day, but it got to a point where it was very, very, very tough, and her breathing became labored. I became nervous. My husband wasn't home at the time, and so I called 911 immediately because she was having a lot of difficulty breathing. After I hung up the phone with 911 and they were on their way, Agnes is standing in front of me, and she's a sweet little 2-year-old, and she's trying to breathe and she can't, and her lips start looking gray, and she ends up collapsing. Literally, I caught her right before she hit the ground, and she collapsed in my arms. And at this point, I could not tell if she was breathing. It did not seem to me that she was. I didn't know. Seconds later, the paramedics are rushing through my front door, thank God. And they are there. They scoop her up. They take me and her. I was pregnant at the time with our third child, and they take us to the hospital. Agnes receives care. It's great. She ends up recovering very well. They get her breathing more stable in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and we're in ICU for the next week or so to get her stabilized with her condition. As we're in the ICU, she becomes very fearful and scared, and because rightly so, she's 2 years old, and the nurses and the doctors are coming in with constant IVs and shots and uncomfortable procedures. And so she just was allowing this fear to overwhelm her, this fear to control her, the fear of that she had no control over the situation, which is what fear does. It makes you feel like you are helpless and you are weak and you must succumb to this fearful thing in the world. And so I knew something was going on with her. She was literally changing in front of me. And the girl that I had raised for the past 2 years was changing in front of me. And I looked at her and I put, like, we were forehead to forehead. And I said, Agnes, listen to me. You can do this. You are strong and you are brave. Do you understand me? And she just nodded her head. I could tell she didn't quite believe me just yet. But I said, no, you listen to me. God made you this way. He made you strong and he made you brave. Now say it again. And I made her repeat it over and over. God made me strong. God made me brave. I was like, that's right. God made you that way. So if God made you that way, you are that. And you need to become that right now. It's hard and it's tough and the shots are going to hurt, but you are strong and you are brave and you can handle it. So I wasn't, negating the concern. I wasn't going to lie to her and say it was going to be easy, but I wanted to remind her of that piece of identity that God gave me years ago that I wanted to give to my daughter. And I watched her from that point on. When the doctors and the nurses came in with their shots and with the IVs, she actually was becoming strong and brave in front of my eyes. She looked at me and as the doctors came in, and she turned and she says, Mom, am I strong and brave? And I said, yes, you are. And she became that. Agnes was released and it was a beautiful time. She was healthy and she is doing well now. And a few months later, I gave birth to my third child. And so I had a little girl and we named her Violet, and I brought Violet home. And this is just 2 months after Agnes was in the hospital. And Agnes looks at baby Violet. It was so sweet. And she has this furrowed brow and she keeps looking at Violet. And I said, Agnes, what's going on? What's wrong? And she goes, Mom. And she's whispering, Mom, did God make her strong and brave too? And I said, yes. And of course, it makes me tear up as a parent, as a mom, but it was beautiful. I was just so thankful that she remembered that. And she looked at this other little girl and she says, Mom, is she strong and brave too? As tiny as Violet was, 24 hours old. I said, that's right. God made all girls strong and brave.
We've been talking with Leah Darrow, the author of The Other Side of Beauty, Embracing God's Vision for Love and True Worth. She writes, it's our identity as daughters of God that's the foundation of our worth. You are strong and you are brave. And the message of this book is to every parent, to every young girl struggling with her identity, for every woman struggling with her identity, for any grandparent that has influence on the identity that it is found in God's vision for love and true worth within these pages, wisdom from someone who has gone through it. who's been on one side and now is on the other side. I strongly encourage you to get a copy of this book and visit her website, theothersideofbeauty.com. Leah Darrow, thank you for being with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.
God bless you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.